Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned?
Welcome. Many of us dream of traveling the world. Our guest did it right out of college with no road plan or whatever. She went with the wind. In the meantime, she also learned 5 languages. But I don't want to tell her story. Let's hear it from her, and I would like to welcome Laurie Gardner. Laurie, welcome.
Thank you, Barry. It's wonderful to be here.
Glad that you can make it. Out of college, you had no job, no nothing, but yet you took off for New Zealand. Tell us what happened.
Well, actually, Barry, I had 3 job offers, which, much to my parents' dismay, I turned down. And instead, I grabbed a backpack and decided that I wanted to travel the world. And I had no plan, as you said. I did have one of those back in the day. You could actually have an open-ended air ticket. And so any time within a year, you could come home. And I ended up actually staying 18 months. I started in New Zealand, ended up in India, Nepal, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, all the way down under. I was gone for a long time.
Well, I was reading your book, The Road to Shine. Mm-hmm. And in it kind of seemed like, okay, you were at crossroads and then something intervened and the next thing you were on another adventure. How did you feel about all this uncertainty?
I've never been someone who fits in the box.
Okay.
I mean, even when I went to college, I thought, oh yeah, I'll try and do something straightforward. I'll major in English or something like that. And instead, I ended up majoring in comparative world religions and psychology, yet taught quantum physics. So that didn't seem like a fit to most. And again, when I graduated from college, by that time I realized, okay, I'm not going to be doing the regular path. And so for me, there were times when I think when I was younger, it was easier to just, hey, throw caution to the wind. Let's just go backpack the world. We'll get jobs later. I have done, as you said, come to a crossroads several times and made a decision that was not the safe one. And every time I end up in a better place. And I will say it gets scarier as I'm older to say, yeah, I think I'll leave behind that career and that salary or that man that I was engaged to almost. But I have no regrets. Each time I've ended up in a better place.
Is this for sheer luck or just the universe looking out after you? Because everybody is petrified of taking the next step.
That's right.
And what do you say to that?
First and foremost, you have to be your true self. And to thine own self be true. It's very trite, but it's completely on the mark, because what I've found is when my inside world matches my outside world, and by that what I mean is who I am inside, in my outside world, the people who I hang with truly know who I am. What I'm doing for my job is a reflection of my true self. Where I live feels comfortable and at home. When those 2 worlds align, maybe it's luck, maybe it's the universe looking out, but that's the starting point, is I have to be in my authentic self. Whenever I've tried to do what society says, or this is the safer bet, but it didn't feel like it was really me, whether it was a job or a relationship, it hasn't worked out well. But every time I've said, this is what feels true to my heart, you can choose whatever belief system you want. Luck, karma, law of attraction. I just know that it works.
When you are in this, what would you call it, this true authentic self mode, and you are at crossroads, can you just describe the feeling, or is it just so evasive that it's hard to pinpoint?
Again, it's changed as I've gotten older. Right? So when I was younger, I was like, hey, wahoo! Like, I was just, what an adventure. When I took off the first time around the world, and I've been on several world travels since then, it didn't even occur to me. It was a single female traveling through the world. I'm like, yeah, so I'll be careful at night, or I'll watch my stuff. It didn't, I felt fear, but not really. As I've gotten older and done these crossroad, choices, it's exciting and also it's scary. Of course it's scary sometimes. But I think the key for me is to acknowledge the fear, but not let that stop me, right? So out of grad school, as an example, again, several wonderful job offers in my field. I was in public school reform at that point, felt very deeply that every child deserves a quality, free education, no matter what their background. And there were these lovely, well-paying job offers waiting for me, and I woke up at 3:30 in the morning with this huge aha. And I just thought, how can I tell other people how to fix America's public schools if I've never been in the trenches myself? And so I said no to all the job offers. I found the most in the heart of inner city Boston gang kid high school I could find, and I went and said I would love to volunteer as a teacher. And was I scared? It just felt so evident that this is the next step. Like, how can I be authentic? How can I tell other people how to change schools if I've never actually been in the worst of it? It was scary, but that was so farther down compared to this is what needs to happen.
Going for this job in the inner city, it was not the first job that you had, but let's back up a minute, because along the path you had to learn different languages.
Mm-hmm.
You now speak 5 languages fluently.
Right.
How did that come about?
Well, the first time I had no choice. Well, okay, we had a choice. I grew up in a very small town, and we had a choice in 7th grade of study skills with Miss Lamb or French. And Miss Lamb was mean. So I said French, definitely French. And so that was my first language, and I ended up really loving it. And I thought, oh, this is great. And I was an exchange student on a French-speaking farm in Switzerland when I was 16, and the family spoke no English. So if you needed food and you needed to find your way to the store, or you just learned. And that was my first. And after learning French, I took off, let's see, I did have a job in San Francisco after I came back from my world tour that was not a fit with my authentic self in the corporate world. And I just said, you know what, I live in California at that point. It was in San Francisco. How can I not speak Spanish? Half the people here speak Spanish. And so I bought a one-way ticket to Mexico City on Christmas Day. I put all my things in storage. I left that job, and I said, I'm not coming home till I speak Spanish. And I ended up living with a wonderful family in Guatemala. I traveled all the way, started in Mexico City, stopped in Guatemala to learn Spanish, traveled a bit, and ran out of money in Bolivia and came home.
How has this helped you going forward, knowing all these different languages?
You know, we live in a global society, and personally, I think it's a little bit ethnocentered to feel that the rest of the world should speak our language. And even if you're not good at languages, like you were joking, but in many cultures, I mean, in Latino culture, if you even just say hola, they're delighted. Like, oh my gosh, you're trying. And I'm like, that was it, until I learned. I'm like, that was my, my one word. And so I just think that it's important to at least try. And why should we assume, and look, world powers and politics are changing, soon we may all have to learn Chinese, who knows? So for me, I feel it's a responsible thing for us to learn languages, whether or not you have an aptitude, at least try.
In your book, you talk about blind spots.
Yeah.
Could you explain us a little bit more?
The book came out completely unexpectedly. I have to back up just a little bit with the backstory of the book, because I was in this school reform job after I was teaching and then became a principal in inner city Boston. I really, really felt passionately, and still do, about America's schools are not where they should be for such a wealthy country. And so I ran off into the desert after being in this very powerful but draining workaholic job, just to get away from cell phones, and I fasted for a week. And the question that was burning in my mind, which relates to the blind spots, is I just was looking at my own life, saying at that point, I was not the adventurous Laurie traveling around the world. I was stressed out. I was 40 years old and not with a partner, no one in sight, so I was lonely and angry that I was still single. I won't even tell you what I was doing to my body with stress. I was living in a place that definitely did not feel like a reflection of my true self. And so I went off on this fasting experience with this burning question of, why do we settle for less in our lives? Why am I settling for less? Why do we stay in the wrong job or the wrong relationship or compromise our health? And these 3 steps came out in the book of how to stop doing that. And the very first one was uncover your blind spots. How and why are you holding yourself back from living more fully?
So how do we move through this blind spot that is really holding us back? When people tell us you're bucking the trend because of this, or bucking the trend, or you're not allowing and you're not doing, yada, yada, yada.
It's much deeper than that, and for me it ties back to what we were saying at the beginning of being your authentic self. And so if you're not happy in your life, I'm a firm believer it's because there's something you're not seeing. Because if you could just fix it, we would, right? I really believe that. Well, some people get a payoff in an unhealthy way from feeling sorry for themselves and all that, but the majority of us truly would like to be happy in all of our spheres, our relationships, our work, etc. And so these blind spots, the first step in even uncovering them is to recognize there's probably something I don't see. And some people are in denial about that. And you have to look deeper. So I'll give you an example. One of the blind spots is family patterns and how we were raised. So in myself, I was raised in a family where the unspoken message was you have to work really hard to be prosperous. Nothing can just flow. And you just have to just nose to the grindstone. And even then, the shoe could drop at any minute. So you better and hence me becoming a workaholic for most of my years because that was my message. And once I realized, oh, wait a minute. Why does it have to be hard? Right? I used to have fun in my 20s. What happened? Why am I suddenly this workaholic woman who is so stressed out? And that was a huge one for me. Another blind spot are what people call shadow side traits.
Shadow
side traits.
Please explain that one. I've never heard that.
Okay, so your shadow side these are the qualities you would never want anyone to say about you in your obituary. Oh, Barrie was so selfish. What an arrogant, pick whatever word for you, right? That you're like, oh gosh, I hope no one, because these are qualities that either you learned or you have and you're ashamed of, or you're not seeing how to use them in balance, right? So for me, selfish was a big one. Yeah, so these are the traits that we have inside that we're not proud of. And for me, selfish was a big one because I thought, well, I don't ever want to be called selfish, right? But as I looked deeper and did different workshops and reading about shadow side traits, I realized, well, wait a minute. Actually, sometimes it's really important to put my needs first. Even in an airplane, put on your oxygen mask first and then help the next person and you're dead and you're both dead. And so this was a big aha, like, oh, well, sometimes it's actually very important and helpful to be happy to put your needs first. If you're burnt out and tired, you're not going to be helpful to any of the children in school reform, for example. Other times, sure, selfish can be used in an unhealthy way, but there's nothing wrong with putting your needs first if you look at it more neutrally. And so these are a couple examples of these blind spots. I was trying so hard not to be selfish. I was just putting everyone else first in my work life, and I was exhausting myself, for example.
Sounds almost like you were a doormat, too.
Thanks, Barrie.
Well, no, we all go through this. We have this mother instinct to please everybody except ourselves.
Especially women.
Yeah.
Especially women. And we're collaborative, and we truly want to help. And if you have that added thing of you're ashamed of being, oh, I don't want to put myself first because that makes me a bad person, then sure. And so cleaning that up, I thought, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be a doormat. Well put, right? And there has to be a way to balance. And so that was my first step, was really looking at what are some of the family patterns I have learned, what are these shadow side traits that I can neutralize instead of, letting them drive me unconsciously. And that's the first step. Yeah.
How long did it take you to work through this?
Layers of the onion.
Layers of the onion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have deeper realizations as you chip away. But I would say the heart of my personal growth work was, but I'm a slow learner, so it took me 5 years.
That's not bad.
Yeah, other people,
could take a lifetime.
It could take a lifetime. Although, wait, there's a great Jewish proverb that says, "Change takes but a moment. Resistance to change can take lifetime."
You've got this incredible energy. I was going to say like you're on speed all the time. Is this your normal vibration, or do you have your peaks and valleys, or you're just such a happy person?
Well, first of all, I'm drug-free, so let's just put that out there. Never even smoked cigarettes or...
Sorry, I didn't mean to be insulting. I mean, it was just you're so up.
No, it's hilarious. Well, it's funny. I had someone, I do workshops as well as writing, and I did one called How to Be Happy Even When Life is Crappy. And a guy came up to me and said the same thing. He said, are you always happy? And I was like, seriously? Put me on the phone with a customer service rep who drops me after the third time. Like, no, I'm not always happy. And at another workshop, I had an older gentleman actually came up to me and he said, I can tell you've been through a lot. And I thought, bags under the eyes, but I moisturized today. Like, what's the problem? And he said, because you only get a smile as bright as yours when you've been through a lot of pain and come out the other end.
Wow.
Really, really insightful. And that's what I would say is once you work through the stuff that's holding you back and making you feel like life is heavy and painful, sure, I have my down days and I get frustrated and angry, but generally I would say, not to get too woo-woo about it, but I'm on a much higher vibration all the time because that was the stuff that was weighing me down, not being my real self, not making choices that made my heart sing. That was heavy slogging. Now this is, even my biggest worries now still feel much more, less of a burden, much lighter than the old days.
Help somebody out.
Okay.
If they find themselves in a contrast situation, what is the best first step to get yourself out of it?
This may sound odd, but I think the first step is they have to want to get out of it. Some people say that they want to get out of it, but really don't, because they're getting some sort of a payoff. They're getting attention from complaining all the time, whether it's their health or this job that they hate. And you know that it's that kind of a person when you come up with all these helpful solutions and you're very supportive, and they're still not taking even tiny steps to try and change. And sometimes it takes a while to realize. I have actually a few friends like this that have finally dawned on me, oh, actually, they say that they hate their job, but they don't really hate their job. They love complaining about how, unappreciated they are. So that's the first step is be honest. Do you actually want to change the situation? Second thing is, are you willing to look at what you need to change? Because for some people that's scary, or that's, there's nothing wrong with me, it's my boss who's the jerk, right? It's the coworkers, what do I need to look at? I mean, really, you get this response when I coach people. They're like, well, I'm not the problem, And so I think it's a willingness to honestly look at your part of what's going on with you too. So even in my situation, absolutely I was in a stressful workaholic job, and absolutely I was a doormat. And until I stopped being a doormat and realized that I was at least 50% and ready to change, I stayed in that situation for 11 years.
Whoa, that's a long time.
Yeah, and because I was driven by the passion of helping the kids, I was willing to be unhappy personally to help the cause. I don't do that anymore, not in my 40s.
Okay, so what are your 3 steps for not settling for less?
Right, so that's the first one, is looking at the blind spots.
Okay.
Well, even step 0, ground 0 is, I want to change, I'm ready to change, I'm willing to look inside. Step 1, looking at those blind spots. And everyone has different ones, right? But your first clue is, look at your family. Look at what you're unhappy about. If you're not making enough money, look at your family's messages about money. If you don't have true love, look at what you learned about how to give and receive love. Was it conditional? Was it unconditional? You have big clues with your family, right? And I love my family, but we all learn healthy and unhealthy things. And then those traits, again, if you were writing your own obituary, like the unobituary, this is what I don't want. And then once you start doing that process and you start to heal these things, like, oh, of course I deserve to be loved. Of course I deserve to have money. Of course I deserve to have true love, or whatever you want. The next step is to say, all right, I've healed my lack of self-love, at least enough layers of the onion that I'm moving forward.
Right.
Then you have to figure out, well, why the heck am I here? Why am I on planet Earth, right? What do I want to contribute? What's my passion and my purpose? And some people clearly have this vision and they know, and other people have like, I have no idea. I just always went, from here to there. I just sort of slogged through my day. And for them, it's a process of discovering what brings your heart alive, what makes you happy. So that, I could talk for an hour on each step, but super briefly, I'm like, wow, how do I condense that to 3 bullets? Key thing in this stage is I like to ask people, look, and you don't have to run off, to the desert and fast.
Well, that's good.
You can be brushing your teeth or driving, and just ask yourself, if I had all the money in the world, I had no responsibilities, what makes me happy? What would I do just for fun? I don't have to worry about anything. Everything's taken care of. What would I do? And people know, oh, well, if I could just sing all day long, I'd be thrilled. Okay, and that doesn't mean you necessarily are going to be the next rock star, but you can sing in the shower, you can sing in the local community choir, but you bring that passion into your life. I think there's a misconception that you have to do what you love for a paycheck. God bless you if you can, and I feel happier when I can. Again, I'm very passion-driven in my work, but I know plenty of people who do have a job that brings in, enough money to take care of their expenses, but they leave enough time to make their heart sing on the weekends or in the evenings, or they make sure there's still that balance. And then the third step, once you figure out, okay, so I'm not going to hold myself back anymore. I know where I want to plug in. Now you have to take the leap. Now you have to do it.
That's the scariest part, is taking the leap. It's like, do you take the leap, and what happens if it's the wrong leap?
No such thing as a wrong leap.
Okay.
Never, never, never. I mean, I would say that everything's a learning experience. I've truly found that. Even when I've gotten into relationships, let's say, and taken a big leap to be with a certain fella that didn't work out, I learned so much that I would, in retrospect, say that wasn't the wrong relationship. It wasn't the right relationship, but it wasn't a mistake. Some thoughts around taking a leap. I think the first thing is, I want to just back up and say, for some people, leap in itself implies like big jump, right? There's an expression, what is it, go big or go home.
I never heard that. Okay.
Yeah, there's an expression, go big or go home. Well, most people are like, bye-bye, I'm going home, right? I don't want to, that's horribly scary. But you can take little steps. I think that's the first thing to understand is, you could, if you're not ready to just leave that job, at least start informationally interviewing or poking around the web, or start thinking about, well, I don't even like being a lawyer anymore, or whatever your situation is. What might I want to do? And so I think small steps are just as good as a big leap. And the other thing to understand is that, yeah, it's all learning experiences. So if you leave that job and leave that relationship, you're going to end up in a better place. And again, it depends on your view. Is that luck or not? There's a reason why you needed to leave in the first place, right? What's that book that's so funny? Let's take relationships. It's called A Breakup Because It Was Broken. It's by the writer of Sex and the City, Greg, somebody wrote it. Anyway, and that's true with anything. Like, it wasn't working for you. So even if you feel lonely for the next 5 years and you're like, oh, should I have broken up with the... Well, yeah, you should have, because you weren't happy. You didn't feel like yourself. And so while it may not feel in the moment like, oh, was that the wrong move? No, that was the right move. And time again, when you push past that and people, decide, hey, I'm fine without, I'd rather be myself with friends and loved ones than with some schmoo making compromises, right? Or you find a partner who's better, everyone looks back and says, oh, I'm so glad I didn't stop in the scary part right after the leap until I got where I wanted to be.
You talk about 40 tips and quips to get out of a funk. You want to share a few of them with us?
The official name, Barrie, is How to Be Happy Even When Life is Crappy, 40 Tips and Quips to Get You There.
I like that.
Yeah. I grew up in New Jersey, so my family is very witty and funny, and so I love little witticisms. I love Mark Twain as well. Some of the ones that, for example, I'll say are unsubscribe from your to-do list. Life's too short to be endlessly chasing chores. The fastest way to stress yourself out and not to be happy is to just be constantly running around doing things. And so one of the things, again, when I'm coaching people or working with them one-on-one, there's this process of, first of all, there's too much of a burden, let's get it off of you. Another one I'll say is, with social media, you are what you tweet. Be as mindful of your words as you are of your actions. Especially with social media, we just email and pop off and say this or text that, and I truly believe, as the Buddhists say, you have to be mindful of the impact of words. So these are just, these tips and quips are just little, downsized blame is another one I say, own your part, nothing more, nothing less, right? So just little words of wisdom to remind us to stay happy in the moment, not just the big picture we're talking about what I want to be and do in the world, but how can I have a better attitude in day-to-day moments? Yeah.
Laurie, this is terrific. What would you like to leave the audience with?
I would love for people to know, first and foremost, that change is possible. You're not alone. There's lots of help out there. Lots of people are feeling the same way that you are. And most of all, life really is too short not to live fully and for you not to pursue your passion. So it's time. The world is waiting for your gift.
Laurie, thank you so much for joining me. It's been terrific. And I hope you've learned something. And what are you doing about your passion? Love to hear from you. Please write us here at The Woman's Connection. Bye now.